What makes a monster powerful? In many depictions of media on the topics with genres horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and thriller, you will likely see creatures ranging from possessed dolls to savage extraterrestrials and gargantuan structures that tower over everything else. For some of these, if not most, it's easy to understand the power they possess and how much control they have on just about everything. They seem to come in and take everything they want and need, with no care for the destruction they leave in their wake. But no matter what media that depicts creatures like previously mentioned, I've always had a question that has racked my mind. What makes a monster powerful? Before I can dive deeper into that thought, I think it would be best to first examine what makes a monster a monster. In a study by the University of Cambridge, they published a paper titled, "What is a Monster?" And according to them, many creatures we define as monsters gain this title by having an appearance that differs from our common and collective understanding and agreement of how something should look and behave. For example, a dog is something that has 4 legs, 2 ears, a snout, and a tail. But if we find something that resembles a dog but now has 6 legs instead of 4 and speaks English, it very well may be to some a monster. On a personal note, I have always found that monsters, in any sense, are creatures that do appear differently. For instance, the commonly known Slenderman from creepypasta genre shows exactly what I would see as a monster. Sure, there are people out there who find him attractive, and who am I to judge? Anyway, the point I'm making is, when people see other humanoids such as Slenderman, with his overly long limbs and torso, I can probably bet you would feel a little unnerved. The unnatural lengths and proportions of creatures have always been something that has haunted the minds of humans, such as the Skinwalker, a part of Navajo culture, sometimes appearing as a lanky and grotesque figure with rotten teeth and an extrusive set of antlers on top their head. Or the Naga, a divine race of partly human and partly snake-like creatures most commonly depicted with a human body and a snake-like head, as a part of Hindu and Buddhist legend. All over the world, oceans apart, for thousands of years, human minds have run wild with these stories of creatures that defy our understanding of the natural order. Even now, aspiring writers who conjure up tantalizing tales with creatures with similar abnormalities write them knowing, or not, that these strange and unusual differences is what captures the human mind in the world of horror, dragging the imagination into a pit of incredible beings. Now that we have gotten that out of the way, knowing that most monsters are just varying creatures who have altered the socially acceptable categories, what now makes them powerful? Creatures like death angels from The Quiet Place, I find perfectly depict what a monster would be according to the previously mentioned standard. Their long and grotesque figures with protruding legs and arms that appear a little bit longer than what seems normal would send me into intense panic if I saw one of them barreling down on me like a feral hound with their lovely set of teeth when I accidentally step on a twig. I'm sure you're wondering now, why would I ask what makes them powerful? Surely I see how obvious it is. They're fast, hungry, violent, and their body's armor plating is strong enough to withstand most missiles. Well, of course I can see how this makes them strong in a physical sense. As proven in the 3 movies, me and just about everyone else would stand no chance once one of them locked onto us. However, I think there's an overarching sense of power that is foreboding throughout all these medias. Not just in The Quiet Place, a power that you can physically see, if you know what to look for. You've already most likely noticed it, or the lack of it. Maybe you just haven't realized it yet. It's the idea that this perception of a monster doesn't have to ask. It doesn't have to proclaim, because it just is. They come and do what they want. Sometimes, if not most times, they leave destruction physically to a landscape, as well as mental scars for those involved. They never say why they do what they do. They never even have to say anything at all. I think a lot of this power is held within 3 premises. Their bodies speak for themselves, power doesn't require answers, and morality doesn't define destruction. Take these 3 monsters into account. Godzilla. In the vast media of the Godzillaverse, we see kaiju roaming the earth untamed by humans, living out their lives by their own will, or until another kaiju comes along and initiates a battle between titans. These monolithic bodies seem to block out the sky. With their extensive form, their destruction so monumental, so detrimental to humanity, that the very possibility of extinction always seems to loom in the air. but you will never see a kaiju explaining why it does what it does, or why they seem to be somewhat indifferent to the outcome of humanity's existence, despite their home being alongside them. In some films involving Godzilla, he seems to act as a protector of humanity, keeping Titans in balance and Middle-earth guarded. We never really know why Godzilla has taken this role, but he does so without complaint, and without a single utterance for any reason why he should care. It makes sense for him to keep the Titans in line, after all he is one of them, but us humans, we've done nothing but cause destruction in his world. So why does he decide to be the monster that protects? Cthulhu. In Cthulhu mythos we meet Cthulhu, a cosmic entity created by the renowned writer H.P. Lovecraft. Appearing as an anthropodial creature, resembling an octopus for a head, set atop a vaguely human-like body. Cthulhu's massive size seems to dwarf everything around him, his appearance so big and grotesque causing everyone who gazes upon his form to be driven into insanity. In the tales of Cthulhu, he lays under the sea, partially dormant, waiting to be awoken from a slumber when the stars align again, and he is able to escape from the city of R'lyeh and claim back the earth that was once his. Despite our knowledge from context placed in the tales of Cthulhu, we are still left with a vague understanding as to why he wants to destroy humanity and not try to coexist. Cthulhu never explicitly explains as to why he wants to do anything, with only a heavy weight of malicious intent hanging in the air. His power is so beyond the comprehension of the human mind that even if he did expound on his motivations, we would still be left in utter turmoil and confusion. Shimmer. In the movie Annihilation, we are shown a mysterious and alien-like phenomenon called the Shimmer. This utterly bizarre and chaotic anomaly radically alters DNA in the area known as the Zone. With cancerous and transmutative effects, almost everything in the Zone is thrown into a state of uncontrollable evolution, for better or worse. The Shimmer, while seemingly intelligent and sentient, keeps its moral code ambiguous and its goals vague, extensively repainting the canvas of the earth into an otherworldly mural. All the aforementioned monsters are exceedingly familiar with their actions and moral ambiguity. Godzilla, seemingly hopeful in some media to help humanity, attempting to keep peace and order in his home. Cthulhu is hell-bent on the destruction of the human race, with his moral code and goals remaining ambiguously somber. The Shimmer's puzzling behavior appears malicious to some, or to others, a beautifully twisted mural by Mother Nature. Each hold a vastness so great and dense it seems almost impossible to entirely ponder. A capacity for power with such a high potency one could only dream of having, holding a large sense of moral ambiguity, where right and wrong seem to dissolve into meaninglessness. Some might argue that for a monster to be a monster, there must be a significant place for morals in that universe, because if nobody cared about virtue, then nobody would care if the monster won, and everything was thrown into chaos, because a monster is nothing without destruction. I might argue that you're right, but morality falls deeply on the ones who have hurt the most, even for those with power. This doesn't necessarily make the monster a monster for how it acts. Its power and devastation are held in the fact that it doesn't have to say anything, and its morals are just as undefined as its place in the universe. When you're a child, and you imagine a monster under the bed, I doubt you would have expected it to appear to you and explain or even justify why they are there, because they just are. Monsters have and always will be alongside humanity. Their appearance may always be something inferior to what we perceive as normal, but I think it's good to recognize the powerful monsters isn't just determined by the magnitude of its destruction, but by the magnitude of their silence. There is sort of a primal fear in the silence that echoes from these myths. The lack of responses to the ever-piling whys has and always will continue to grow. From mythology, legend, and lore to modern-day novels, movies, and writing forums, monsters always seem to be present. Even in their silence of reality, we still echo their quiet into new stories. Maybe as a way to come to terms with this large lack of knowledge and understanding of our ever-expanding world. But I think it's fair to say that even with the lack of answers, there is still a tranquility that's acquainted with the monster, where its soundless existence is the greatest power. It doesn't necessarily have to be large, or even have a recognizable form. I think the point being made here is that the idea of a monster is in its silence. The most profound horrors are sometimes just as simple as looking up into the vast murky sky at night, or standing along a shoreline and looking out at the profoundly undiscovered sea. That quiet, that emptiness where we sometimes expect an answer, that is the monster. Not the creature, but the lack of understanding as to why. This is what makes a monster powerful. Of course, there is more to this whole idea, more that isn't currently obvious on this topic, but I think consideration should be extended further, and maybe beyond that we will find that there is more to the monster than we realize, a similarity to us, and our own expectations of authenticity, and our humble impermanence.